Hey, I'll see you on tour in Las Vegas, Chicago, and Grand Rapids. In Chicago, it's stand-up and a live panel show. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to jimmydore.com. Guess who's here was with us? Jackson Hinkle, the founder of the independent media outlet The Dive and the host of The Dive with Jackson Hinkle. His program has been permanently banned by YouTube for alleged Ukraine misinformation. But of course, you don't get banned for misinformation. You get banned for information. His Twitter account recently surpassed 2.7 million followers. Woo-woo. Look at that. Jackson, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, Jackson, have you been working out? You look really like you've been beefing up. I
feel like I'm on Tortoise and the Hare again.
Did you see I went out with those guys? Did we talk about this already?
I saw that. We didn't talk about it, but I texted you how funny it was.
I couldn't stop laughing at those guys. They're complete clowns.
Yeah.
I felt
even
bad.
Their own audience knows it. You read the comment section, their own audience grills them too.
I couldn't find one comment that wasn't making fun of them and agreeing with me. But I felt bad because the bald guy's, he's got terminal cancer. So I just can't, I don't get it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's had it for a while. Anyway, so this is what's happening. The ACP, the American Communist Party, right? They got 24,000 followers already. Look at that, almost 25. Let me show you. Here's the video. So you guys launched your Communist Party, freaking commies. And here's the commie promo. This is called commie propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. No, it starts off, it looks like a Ford commercial. Looks like it's going to be for the new Dodge Ram Tough truck or something like that. This is the communist truck, the communist F everybody. Here we go. It seems like a commercial for capitalism, right? But here it is. It's not. It's for commies. Let's watch. It's all about industry. Farming, sure. Super clean chiseling. Look at that, more farming, more industry. Trucking. They're taking fuel. Oh, look at that, ice truckers. Welders, badass welders. Horseback riders. Oh, look at that big shipping. I do not... Who's that bullet train? That's in the future. So there it is. That boy. That. So I never, when I think of communism, right? Because I'm Americanized. I'm propagandized against to be a commie or communism, but that was some good propaganda for communism, and it looks like you're doing an ad for capitalism, kind of like what is that all supposed to symbolize?
Well, if there was an ad for capitalism, it would just be ugliness, despair, and misery. I think that there's nothing beautiful about capitalism, but when you look at communism, you look at places like China, which is very culturally different than the United States, we see nothing but economic success. And in America, communism is going to be its own thing. Of course, we're going to have our own American history, American characteristics that we must address. But ultimately, it's about the rapid industrialization of our economy at a time when the entire establishment is pushing a degrowth agenda and a pro-war agenda. We're going to be focused on doing that at the same time as prioritizing the needs of the American public, which means ending all the endless wars. And most people probably think about communism in the West and they think about liberals and blue-haired college students and woke identity politics. But historically, that couldn't be more off the mark. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of big moneyed interests like Wall Street who have propagandized the American public into thinking that's what communism is. And lastly, the FBI was literally created in America to attack communists. So now you see the FBI attack the largest anti-war, anti-imperialist voices in the world. But initially, it was built to actually attack communists. So we're here to set the record straight and provide a patriotic message for the American people that's actually about saving our country and freeing America from the control of these corporate corrupt entities.
So how does it work? So I always thought communism was the opposite of well, so how does the economy work inside of communism? Capitalism is someone puts up some capital, they start a company, they hire some workers, they produce a product, and then they sell it. What is the difference between that and what you're doing?
Well, I think capitalism, the way it operates in practice, is different than what is actually theorized. People always say, well, communism in practice is very different than how it's theorized. I think actually capitalism is the thing that's different. I mean, if you look at all of the, Abrahamic religions, if you look at Christianity, if you look at Islam, they talk about how, high interest loans, debt, these sorts of things, governing people by debt, these are all sinful acts. And that actually debt cancellation is something that should be celebrated. And under capitalism in the United States, that's just how our economy operates. That is the backbone of the U.S. economy. It's Wall Street and these major transnational corporations who are siphoning money out of the working class by buying up all of the resources, stealing our land, stealing our oil, our natural gas, and also bankrupting the American people through means of debt and rapacious for-profit systems. The way that a communist country operates, at least when it comes to the economic aspect, is much similar to how we are witnessing China operate today. Of course, allow for small businesses to have healthy development, but when it comes to the major industries, when it comes to the basic rights of the people and the basic necessities of the people, those are things that should not be used to try and price gouge the public. Those should be operated by the state, and ultimately a state that is dedicated to protecting the needs of the people. And if they don't, they'll be voted out of power. In America, it makes no sense to me why Bill Gates is allowed to buy up all of the land in the country, or a great portion of it. Makes no sense why BlackRock is allowed to buy up all the land. But the idea of doing what the Soviet Union did or what China did, land reform, is somehow considered extreme. Ultimately, I think this is why we've had such an overwhelming positive response online. I mean, the American Communist Party has been trending now on Twitter for the past 4 days. And on Chinese social media, the people are very happy with what we're doing there as well.
So I still don't understand. Here it is. Here you are trending. I just want to show that. Now, some people are on board for you. George Galloway says, top graphics, this. Best of luck to Jackson Hinkle and your pal Haas. And then this guy says, you are done in the conservative movement. Good luck with the leftists. So...
well, that person is a Hitler supporter, so I don't have a whole lot of care for what they have to say. They're posting Hitler graphics online. But I do appreciate the nod from George Galloway. He's a hero of mine, and I think a hero of many. But look, ultimately, there's always going to be detractors. The main forces that have been aligned against us since we launched over the past few days are pro-war neoliberals, pro-war neocons, people that think that Ukraine is the bastion of democracy and that Israel did nothing wrong. So I think we've made the right enemies, just like you and your show.
So I grew up at a different time than you, right? So even though I look fantastic, I'm twice your age and a little bit maybe more. But so when I grew up, it took like 8 months. If you wanted to buy a refrigerator in Russia, it would take a year or two. If you wanted to buy a car, it would take a year or two, and it would be a piece of shit when you got it. So that's why people were against. That's what I've been told communism. So people don't have an incentive to work because the government owns all the businesses. Now, is that what you're? So you already said that you're okay with small businesses, like you're okay with capitalism on a small scale, right? Like my business here, I employ about 6 people. Like you would, but so I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what it is that you're proposing. What kind of communism? Are you saying the government should run businesses, or no, or how does it work?
I'm saying I'll break it down simply into 2 points. Point A is that we already have an economy that's planned. People oftentimes say that a planned economy is what communism actually is. But the fact is, if you look at America today, we have a planned economy, but it's planned by Wall Street, it's planned by BlackRock, it's planned by the World Economic Forum, and it's planned to enrich them all and benefit them all and force the American people into misery and suffering. So a communist state like China, for example, which is the #1 global alleviator of poverty, they've lifted 840 million people out of extreme poverty over the last 40 years. The idea is that you plan the economy in a way that will collectively not just lift people out of poverty, but rise all of the ships in your country. You know, it's not just about making poor people richer. It's about collectively bringing more wealth to all of the people. I mean, in an ideal communist society, you would have absolutely no one who is poor, no one who is middle class. I mean, you'd have as much wealth as possible for everyone. Obviously, that's idealistic and that's a bit silly to say, but it's, you know, the goal that everyone should be striving for. Why would you strive for poverty and indebting people? So the other thing is, of course, you want to focus on actually meeting the needs of the people. So what are the basic needs of people? The basic needs of people are housing, you need energy, you need
healthcare,
healthcare, these
education.
Sorts of things. So communism doesn't say we want to, you know, have government produce toothbrushes or government produce shoes or something like that. Communism says that when it comes to the basic necessities of human life, those should be things that are operated in a way and produced in a way that don't result in price gouging for the people. They should actually be, distributed equally to all people. You shouldn't have Bill Gates buying up all the land and then destroying the American housing market. These are things that have been done before, and it's why the United States was so pitted against the Soviet Union then, and it's why America is so pitted against China now. And the last thing I'll say regarding the Soviet Union, I mean, during the end of the Soviet Union, situations were very tough. Leadership was poor, to say the least. But also, this was a time after, World War II, when you had tens of millions of Soviets die. And what I think is more important to look at is the situation prior to World War II. I mean, Joseph Stalin and the Bolsheviks took a feudal society that was using horse-drawn plows to, the largest military superpower and one of the largest economic superpowers in the entire world. And that's thanks to nothing but communism.
So I'm still not clear on how it works. So you would still have Elon Musk. So let's say you became the ruling party in America. You guys got power. You got the majority in Congress, and you were the president. How would that affect, say, a business like Elon Musk? Or let's say ExxonMobil, or say a trucking company? How would you wouldn't take, so the government wouldn't seize control of those companies, would they?
I think that America would be much better off if all of our major oil companies were in the hands of the state. I think America would be much better off if big tech was in the hands of the state. That way, there would be no loophole around censoring people online, because they'd actually have to uphold our freedom of speech. You look at Russia today, the reason why they have such a low tax rate, despite not being communist, they have a 13% across the board tax rate. That's primarily due to the fact that they have such high oil and gas revenues, and they're able to actually lower taxes because their government is the one reaping profits and doesn't have to tax their people as much. In America, you have Chevron, you have Shell, you have BP, all these major companies in the West. that are taking that money and stealing it essentially from the public. It's our land.
That's
These
right.
are our resources.
I agree with that. I don't understand why we give away a couple $100 billion a year to oil companies when the oil is underneath our land. The land that I would not be against nationalizing the oil companies, but you wouldn't. And then you invest that money back into America. Okay, I'm with you on that. But I'm also, if you know me, I'm for Medicare for all. I'm for getting a capitalist out from in between me and my doctor, right? And so people have the wrong idea about Medicare for all. They think that the government will then dictate healthcare policies. No, I'll still have a private doctor. I'll still have a private hospital. Just the government will send the check instead of Blue Cross not sending the check and making me bankrupt. So that's the only difference that I have, right? So there's healthcare, there's energy, and when you say that big tech companies, you mean like Silicon Valley, right? Like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, these places that we want to be considered, that people like me want to be considered a town square, right? Meaning an essential service and a town square, so it should be nationalized, meaning that the government would run it? Is that what you're saying?
The government would own it, which means that you wouldn't have, basically the way it operates right now is the government does not own these companies, despite the fact that they're extremely embedded, and there's a revolving door between the government and the private sector in big tech. And the government can secretly recommend that certain people should be silenced or banned from social media, for example. And there's nothing illegal about that. That's not a First Amendment violation because they're just recommending, and this is not the final decision of the U.S. government. If the government owned these sorts of things, then there would be no censorship online because if there ever was, it would be challenged as a First Amendment dispute. I think big picture, you can look at what's going on right now. Look at countries like China or countries like Russia. I mean, Russia's taking the land, the resources, the relationships of the Soviet Union and basically rebuilding this new multipolar world, even though Putin doesn't call himself a communist, basically is taking up the mantle and waving the flag at this point. You look at their relationships with Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, China, of course. America today doesn't produce anything. America produces, stock buybacks. America produces a lot of wealthy individuals who are making money off of debt of hardworking Americans. America produces OnlyFans models and maybe Uber Eats drivers, and that's about it. China, Russia, Vietnam, North Korea, these countries are actually producing real tangible goods, lumber, coal, natural gas, oil. They're producing things. They're building new sovereign markets. In America, we just outsource everything that we used to produce, and now we're left with nothing. So the idea is that we actually bring back those jobs and focus on unleashing the forces of production to rapidly industrialize our economy once more.
So I'm still, I think a lot of people are like me. They're still not really clear on what it means to be a communist in the United States. So you wouldn't be against small business. You'd be for nationalizing energy. You'd be for nationalizing big tech and social media. Is there any other sector of the economy you'd be for nationalizing? Healthcare, right?
I'll say that we launched the party 4 days ago, and though I'm an executive board member, I don't have the final say. In fact, Haz al-Din is the chairman of the party, but all of these decisions about policy points are made through democratic centralism, the process of democratic centralism. So I guess I can't say specifically every single policy point, but generally speaking, I mean, we support things like debt cancellation, total debt cancellation, not just healthcare debt or college debt, total debt cancellation of all privately held debt for American workers and the American people. We support the things that you mentioned, nationalizing these big industries, but it's not just about nationalization. These are the sorts of things that AOC talked about, she obviously didn't fight for, Bernie Sanders talked about, but he didn't fight for. If you don't have the rapid industrialization of your economy, then you're left with really nothing. I mean, what is it that Bernie Sanders is championing? What is it that AOC is championing?
Nothing.
No fundamental changes. You have to not just have an economy that prioritizes the public good and the public need. You also need what China is doing right now, what Russia is doing right now, this rapid industrialization of your economy.
So now China,
all sectors.
So China is a one-party communist country, correct? So, but they're also capitalist at the same time, right? So, like for instance, we have Amazon in America, Amazon.com, which is run by Jeff Bezos, and he's one of the richest men in the entire world. But they also have that in China. They have Alibaba, which is their version of Amazon, and Jack Ma owns it, and he's worth $25 billion. So how does a communist party produce a 25 billionaire? But because they call themselves capitalists, but they also call themselves communist, right? Am I wrong about this?
No, they call themselves communists, and I'd say they're 100% communist. I always think it's funny, like when people talk about things they don't like that they've heard about China, they say it's communist. Like people hear the propaganda from Vice News or the BBC about social credit scores, and then they're like, it's communism. And then when they talk about the economic success of China, they say, oh, it's not really communism, it's capitalism. Ultimately, and specifically Jack Ma, I'm not sure the exact details of Jack Ma, but I think he actually is facing serious legal issues in China right now, and they're trying to actually, hold him accountable, we'll say. And I think also, like, he might be hiding somewhere. No one's seen him in a while, right. So I don't think that's a fair point. But I will say that, again, the idea that communism means everyone is equally wealthy or everyone is brought to a common point of wealth is actually the antithesis of communism. Marx never said that. Stalin never said that. Engels never said that. The idea is as much wealth as possible for as many people as possible. And that means that, you look at China today, they have tons and tons and tons of millionaires per capita. And of course, they don't have the same level of like billionaires that we have in the United States, but they have a lot of millionaires. And the idea is that a rising tide lifts all boats. They're trying to help out as many people as possible, not just focus on directly the impoverished and no one else. And that's kind of what liberals and these social democrats in the West champion. They just focus on these efforts to alleviate the most impoverished without addressing any of the wider fundamental issues that we have in our economy.
So I also, one of the things from my upbringing is that I equate communism with authoritarianism, and that the government just dictates, and just like, how what Jordan Peterson ran into, where they wanted to dictate with his speech, and they're doing the same thing in the United States. They're trying to do that. We have hate speech laws and stuff like that. So do you equate communism with authoritarianism or with freedom?
Well, I think it's you have to look at what you're talking about when we say freedom, because in America you have freedom to align directly with the state, you have freedom to do degenerate things online, and you have freedom to screw over the working class of the country, and you won't have any sort of legal repercussions. You have freedom to be friends with Jeffrey Epstein and go to his private island and diddle around with a bunch of underage girls. But you look at communist states, the laws are actually implemented and upheld. You have the freedom to live a prosperous life. And when it comes to America in particular, we have a rich tradition and history of respecting the basic freedoms that we know and uphold that our founding fathers laid out. So anything that ever comes about in America, and this is the American Communist Party, we'll have to respect those traditions, and we'll have to respect those laws that we already have on the books regarding those basic freedoms, because that's what makes us America.
So you're for the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right? You're for Second Amendment. You'd be for that. You'd be for against unlawful searches and seizures. You're for privacy from the government, stuff like that.
Of course, I think that the most authoritarian, dictatorial, tyrannical governments that we have today are those that are most closely aligned with capitalism. You talked about Jordan Peterson and what he faced. That was in Canada, liberal capitalist country.
Right.
What we face in America, same thing. You just did a tour in Europe. I heard you talk about how everyone in Europe is facing the same stuff. Those are all liberal capitalist countries for the most part. And then you look at countries like Russia and China, and they get a lot of flack for allegedly censoring online. But what are they actually censoring? Well, when they tell Disney to take stuff out of their movies, it's usually stuff about, like transgenderism, because they want to protect the youth of their countries. When, they censor stuff on the internet, they're usually censoring stuff that is pushed by the CIA to try and bring about color revolutions and regime change operations in their countries. So I actually support the efforts that they uphold in trying to protect their sovereignty, and I see it as a necessity.
Okay, so I just think it's a tough sell, right? Because communism's got such a it's like the word communism is we're so allergic to it in the United States. We associate everything bad with communism. We associate authoritarianism, lack of freedom, being thrown into the gulag if you don't go along with the government. That's the kind of. So I just think maybe you should have called it the Workers' Party or something. It's like as if you started the American Fascism Party. You're like, no, that's not what it means. Do you know what I mean?
I think we need a few gulags for Victoria Nuland and Genocide Joe, but that's just me.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But
I think that. Look, I mean, okay, a few
why
years
not call
ago,
it the Workers' Party?
Because we're communists. We stand on business. A few years ago, everyone in America hated Russia and thought Russia was the most evil country on the face of the earth. Now look at how the times have changed. 10 months ago, everyone thought Israel could do no wrong and that they were, our greatest ally. Look at how quick times change. America, had a very, very good relationship with communism at one point. The party, there was a communist party in America. Now it's run by liberal Kamala Harris supporters, but it had 70,000 members, many American celebrities, famous musicians who were dissidents of the state and anti-imperialists joined the party. And I just hope to reinvigorate that rich tradition and establish some sort of a rebirth of our country that's dying. And I think that's why I can't say that everyone who's seen what we're doing is supportive of it, but everyone's definitely curious, and curiosity is what's going to eventually cause people to learn about the fundamentals of what we're preaching.
Are you planning on running people for political office soon?
No, I think that's one of the issues that a lot of third parties have had in the United States, is that they don't actually build any foundational infrastructure. They just start running people for office and taking money from people, donations and stuff. Our goal is to set a strong foundation for our national clubs and build good rapport with the communities that those are in. And I think that the proof is going to be in the pudding. Everyone will see what we're about. I can't speak too much on the details yet because we're still in our infancy, but there's a lot of really great ideas coming out.
So are you planning on organizing workers? Like, for instance, organizing how about all the Walmart workers in California? Wouldn't that be something if they were all unionized?
We're planning on organizing workers, not like that. I think that would be good, of course, but not like that. And we'll have announcements of that, within the next 6 to 12 months. We're going to be launching. We're going to have an in-person launch in September in Chicago. And, you can follow our Twitter page online, and you're going to have all the details there for how to get involved.
Well, you are never going to get a Hollywood agent being a communist. I'll tell you that. You've really wrecked your Hollywood career. And if there's anybody who could have had one, it was you, big dummy. Here, I want to ask you about this. The Communist Control Act of 1954 is an American law signed by President Dwight Eisenhower, American patriot, on August 24th, 1954, that outlaws the Communist Party of the United States and criminalizes membership in or support for the party or communist action organizations, and defines evidence to be considered by a jury in determining participation in these activities, planning actions. So how do you get around that? Is that still law?
As of right now, that law, that act or whatever is not upheld by the courts. But I'll say this, if there's any way to single-handedly prove that we're the real deal, it's if they try to overturn that in the courts and use it against us. So we'll wait and see. So
you're not against people starting a business and becoming successful. You're not going to you're not going to say, wait, we have to take your money and redistribute it because you have too much money. You're not going to do that. Are you going to do that?
No. I mean, look, it's about what people are doing, what resources they're utilizing. China does have a good portion of workers that work in private enterprise. I'll say that the people working in public enterprise actually have better wages and salaries, and that's the majority of the country. But don't
they have slave labor?
Not explicitly opposed to that.
Don't they have slave labor in China? Isn't that the problem? They have fences to keep their workers in, and am I wrong about this?
I saw it in CNN once, but the thing is, those stories were oftentimes, you know how the mainstream media always says Taiwan is an independent country, it's not China, right? They're trying to start a war. Yeah. The only time that the mainstream media said Taiwan was China was when they went and they filmed those corporations and the working conditions in Taiwan, and they blamed China for it. They went to Foxconn, which, from what I understand, is no longer operating, or it's very minimally operating in Taiwan. It's now mostly in Indonesia. But that was in Taiwan, and I think they've done away with that for the most part. Okay. But overall, I mean, you look at videos of China, they have a much higher standard of living. First of all, they don't have 600,000 homeless people. They don't have 60,000 homeless veterans. They don't have 80 million people that have no health insurance or a lack of basic health insurance. You look at their major cities, it's clean. I've been there. They have great infrastructure. Their cities look like something out of a movie or a video game. The buildings that they have there are incredible. You could drive a high-speed rail train, 4 hours into the middle of nowhere. They're still going to have, functioning water. They're going to have good electricity. They're going to have Wi-Fi. They're going to have paved roads. If anyone's been around America, that's not the case, especially when it comes to clean drinking water. So, I'm not saying that we're going to be a carbon copy of China, but we do have to learn from people who are doing things successfully right now. And that's not Germany. It's not France. It's not the UK. It's countries that are building this multipolar world. But
you still uphold the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. That's the important thing. You're a patriot in the sense that you embrace the U.S. Constitution, correct?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Jackson Hinkle and the American Communist Party. Oh my God. Trying to make communism not a bad word anymore. If there's anybody who could do it, it's Jackson the Hair Hinkle. And so if it's pro-worker and it's about bringing industry back to America, I think you'll find people to support that. I think so too. If we can get the message out there, your show's very helpful. They already banned us from Wikipedia, so we got to try our hardest. Thanks for having me on to talk about it. All right, well, bring Haas with you next time. We'll talk about it. All right, sounds good. Okay, buddy. Talk to you soon. Hey, I'll see you on tour in Las Vegas, Chicago, and Grand Rapids. In Chicago, it's stand-up and a live panel show. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to jimmydore.com.